Good evening. President Clinton went to see American troops in Germany today and promised to intensify the air war against Serbia. He described it as a struggle for the elemental principle of the common humanity of every single living, breathing person on the continent of Europe. The bombing campaign's been going now for 6 weeks. There's still no obvious sign the Serbs are ready to back down. David Shukman on the president, the rhetoric and the reality of the war in the Balkans.
Air Force One arrived in Europe today with an American president determined to bolster support for the battle over Kosovo. Tonight came the easy part. Bill Clinton posed with the 3 American soldiers released by the Serbs at the weekend.
Are they in good shape, sir?
They look fine.
This was a PR gift for the White House. Much more difficult is selling the long haul required by the NATO air campaign.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Mr. Clinton came to the cutting edge of the bombing operation at the stealth fighter base at Spangdahlem in Germany. Here, the air crew, support teams and their families heard a rousing call to arms against the barbarity going on in Kosovo.
If we want Europe to be undivided and democratic and at peace for the first time in history, and if we don't want your successors to have to come to this continent and fight another bitter war, then we must stand in Kosovo for the elemental principle of the common humanity of every breathing, living person in this continent.
So Bill Clinton has given his most stirring justification so far for this campaign. Obviously, he feels he needs to, because the bombing may have to last many more weeks. More planes are being sent, more targets are being hit, because the alliance has no other option. Mr. Clinton made a special point of meeting the men he's ordered to bomb Serbia. These images, carefully arranged, are meant to show that although Washington may be worried about public opinion and about a divided Congress, the president will go on bombing for as long as it takes. I asked NATO's Supreme Commander if the campaign was working, given that the Kosovo Albanians are still being persecuted by the Serbs.
I'm outraged by this, that these people in uniform, could do this to innocent people. It's an outrage.
But they're going on despite 7 weeks of bombing.
And with every week, he's getting weaker and less capable.
But there is a price for NATO as well. 2 American crewmen in an Apache helicopter gunship were killed in a training accident in Albania last night. They're NATO's first casualties. Commanders know it may get worse. A development welcomed by NATO tonight was the arrival in Italy of the moderate Albanian leader Ibrahim Rugova. Thought to have been under house arrest, his permission to travel here may conceivably be something of a concession by Belgrade. Still, the bombing goes on unchecked, and with it, the rallying for support. NATO believes Mr. Milosevic will eventually back down. The problem is, when?
Aid agencies in Albania want to close refugee camps near the border with Kosovo because of the danger of shelling by Serb artillery. 100,000 people already driven into exile could soon be forced to move again. Some of the most tragic victims are the old, many of whom fear they may never see their homes again. From Kukës in northern Albania, Fergal Keane reports.
They're being moved south, away from the danger zone of the border. These are people who no longer have any control over their lives. NATO troops will escort them on this journey. It's one more uprooting after days of trauma. And that's more true for the old than anybody else. But as some leave, still more refugees arrive in Kukës. We met 76-year-old Emrina Reja on the road from the border. Paralysed from the waist down, she'd spent 4 agonizing days travelling in this ramshackle vehicle. She told us her 4 sons had gone missing. She spent 3 days alone, and in all that time she did not eat, she told us. The Serbs robbed the old woman's house, but her daughter managed to hide her jewellery. It was a small victory in the face of terror. But Mrs. Reja is one of the luckier old people. She at least has a family. Those with nobody to take care of them end up in hospital here in the town of Kukës. It is overcrowded and there is little dignity for the old. Last night an old man died, the empty bed testament to a life that ended far from home in an anonymous room. Today foreign doctors began to transfer the elderly to a refugee camp. Here at least they will get good medical care. They're also close to an airstrip where they'll soon be flown south. It would be a comforting thought to believe that the journey into exile of these old people was now over, that they would have time and space to rest. But with aid agencies warning that this area could be targeted by Serb artillery, it seems they face yet another traumatic journey. For the doctors, it's as much a job of giving mental comfort as it is medical care.
The most important thing for us to do is to let people here know that somebody cares and that we're here and that we're solid and that we're not going to forget about them and that we're going to make sure that they're safe now.
The camp already has a high population of old people, those who must wonder if they'll ever see home again. For the family of Hanusha Marina, it's a very pressing question. She is more than 100 years old. These eyes have seen empires come and go, have seen 2 world wars. I lived through the Nazis, she told me, but I've never known anything as bad as this. And so remember the name of Hanusha Marina. Record that for 100 years she lived in her father's land, and that she is spending the last days of her life in a refugee camp.